In this episode of Storyteller Therapy, we are going to be talking all about investment, investing in your career, how to invest in your career, why to invest in your career, and in what way should you be investing in your career? What exactly should you be doing? How much does it cost? Why? How? What are things that don't cost anything? I'm so excited because we're talking with Shannan E. Johnson, the Shannan E. Johnson from the Professional Pen, who is going to help you understand how to best invest in your career as a writer. When it comes to investment, it's really important that you make wise decisions in choosing who you're listening to. So, Shannan is someone that you should absolutely be listening to. She knows a ton about writing and building careers for writers. So, her services are going to be available, and I talk a lot about that toward the end, and you have access to that in the show notes. Also, in the show notes, the opportunities to take a course from me. I'm teaching an 8-week pilot course with a Black film space. It's on demand. You can take it at any time, and it's in depth. You learn everything from this is the idea that I have all the way to writing your original pilot in 8 weeks. Along the way, you're going to be in the development process, learning about character development and world building. And then at the very end, it's a whole module on career development. What you need to know to move your career forward as a writer. Everything you need to know is going to be in the show notes. Whether it's taking a course from me, one on one consulting with me, working with Shannan and her company, or any fellowships that I may be offering at the time. Right now, I'm doing a long term 4-week fellowship where I work one on one with you on your screenplay. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Without further ado, Shannan E. Johnson.
I see the red lipstick. You're ready.
Listen,
Podcast time.
I do not wear makeup. I don't know what it is, and I one day will find the science behind this. But for me, the red lip means I don't have to do anything else.
I mean, it looks like
Because
your
I
face is
definitely did
done,
not
so it's doing what it's supposed to do.
do anything
Yeah.
else. I never learned. I think maybe there was like a time in like middle school where they pull you aside and show you how to do these things. But I did not, maybe I was absent that day
No,
because I never did learn.
but we grew up during a time where you were kind of a Jezebel for having a full face. Like it's new for it to be like, no, you can change your face, change your wig, change your this, change your that. Like that's new.
Can I just say that like I fully own the internalized misogyny part, but I also think that the millennial part is also valid.
Absolutely.
I do not remember anybody in high school wearing makeup.
No, they
I
didn't.
do.
They weren't
There were girls
allowed.
who were pretty, and then there were girls who were not, and that's just
And
like
that's just
what it
it.
was.
Nobody wore
And I
full
was
face of makeup.
right.
Maybe,
No,
when I was in middle school, the Hispanic girls wore makeup, but still makeup was like lip. they weren't,
right.
they
That like
weren't,
sexy combo with
yeah,
the liner and like.
yeah, yeah. But
Let's get into it. So,
conversation.
one thing I want to bring up that's not on the
Yeah,
questions that I generally have prepared had to do with the fact that you said you were a performing artist.
yes.
Um, and I'm taking this from context clues from my last conversation because we didn't go into it when I talked to you before. But
Mhm.
were you were a dancer,
I
right?
danced, sang, and acted. So I did. I was in a couple of dance companies, and then I did Broadway national tours.
That is huge.
Mhm.
That is huge. And I'm curious about how, since this whole conversation is about investing in yourself as an artist or
Yeah,
investing in your career as an artist,
yeah.
is there a huge difference between investing in yourself as a writer, a screenwriter, director, or something sort of on the film side versus the stage as a performer in that way? Yeah.
Okay. I think the biggest thing between investing in yourself as a writer, the biggest difference between investing yourself as a writer and investing in yourself as a performing artist is that the performing artist opportunities to invest in yourself are more forward facing, right? It's like there are dance studios, so I can go take a dance class. There are singing lessons that I can sign up for, and it's just kind of readily available. Now, does that mean that everyone is doing it? No. But those people who are really serious about their craft, I was in a dance company and still spending money on dance classes not every night, but X amount of nights, per week. I was in a dance company and still had a gym membership, even though all I did was work out all day dancing. I still went to the gym before and after. If we were touring and we got to a new city, I was going to the gym, sometimes even before the show, right? Same thing with singing lessons. The person at the top knows that they have to continue to strengthen the muscle. You know what I'm saying? It's like Beyonce has a singing coach. You know what I mean? She has a vocal coach. That person keeps you healthy. That person keeps you consistent. You know what I mean? And so people don't think about it that way. So I did a interview the other day with Tim Joe, who plays Daniel on Reasonable Doubt. He's an actor. And he said in the second season of doing the show, he went and got an acting coach. And it's like you're already a series regular, you're already on the show, you already know the character, you could just glide through. And he was like, no, I went and got a coach because I wanted to be able to see this character differently this year and get somebody else to help me to get there. But that's because that was inside of him as an artist. You know what I'm saying? So no matter what, even if it's forward facing or not, you have to care about the craft. And so many people don't.
One thing that I've always said is that I feel like film is an apprentice type business.
Yeah.
And like in the same way that you would be a apprentice to like a blacksmith or a
Hmm.
shoemaker or something like that, you really learn on the
On the
job.
job.
But in a lot of the ways that I think about people talking about how things are changing, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because there are less opportunities to be a part of that apprentice system. There's less writers on set. There's budgets are being cut in a specific way, and you don't really get to pay your dues in that same kind of way that gives you experience. And so
Yeah.
you really do need to take a class, right?
Hmm.
Because the writers' rooms are virtual, they are shorter, they are not sending writers to set. So you really do need somebody to be like, okay, this is how you do it, because you're not going to get that experience on the job in the same way.
Hmm.
At the same time, with the change that a lot of people are feeling disgruntled with, opens a ton of opportunity for people who do not have opportunity, because there's a lot of gatekeeping when you have to go through the apprentice system and you don't have any access to understanding the culture, the protocol, the way things work in a certain environment if you haven't been in it.
Yeah.
And the advent of people getting on Zoom or in a classroom, wherever they do it, and say, okay,
Hmm.
there's the rules and there's the real rules. And let me explain how this works.
Yeah.
Do not speak to an actor on set. Nobody speaks to them but the director. These are
Yeah.
things you need to know that you're not going to find in a book and you're not going to find that are Googleable. Which brings me to like my first major question for you, which is just a general sense of your background, your
Mhm.
experience, and how you came to work with screenwriters.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not having this deep sigh because I don't know my background. I am thinking about how, like most people, it's just an odd way of getting to a place, right? So I didn't really know that screenwriting existed like as a career. I didn't really understand that you write something in a particular format and that's how it ends up on screen. I grew up wanting to be a novelist. I carried books everywhere. So I just thought somehow it gets produced and they put it on the screen. I never really took the time to research it and never would have. Like I just hadn't even thought about it. As much as I loved watching TV and loved watching movies, I just never really thought about what the process actually was. And in my senior year in college, my mother sent me an article about a Black female TV writer. I don't know why she sent this to me. I never told her I wanted to write for TV, but she sent it as in like toured out of the magazine and mailed it to my university because there was like email was new, attachments. I don't even know if you can do that. And she wouldn't have known how to do it anyway. But she sent me the actual article and I read it and I said, this is what I want to do. So that was, and I was a senior and I was in my graduating year and I was already doing an internship for journalism. So that's how far along in my career. I
Mhm.
took a switch like, oh, whoa, what is this? It was then that I decided, oh, because I knew I was going to grad school just because I'm an overachiever, but I didn't really know what I wanted to study. So I was just going to study English because I enjoy writing, but meh. So that was like, great, I'm going to film school. So while applying to film school, they asked me to write a screenplay. And I thought that was the silliest thing because I'm like, I'm applying so I can learn how to write. I don't know how to write a screenplay. And this is before there is Google. How do you write a screenplay? Like So I went to the library, and I was in a small college town. I went to the library. I went to the, what's the name of that book? Half Price Books. All these places trying to find. I found one book in the entire city that was
Wow.
about screenwriting, and I took it home and I looked at it, and then I copied the format as much as I could. Right? It's probably terribly written, like show don't tell is like out the window because I didn't understand anything about that. So it was basically just like a couple of pieces of action and a whole bunch of dialogue, right? But it was enough to get me into, my program. But while I was in the program, I had a professor say to me, "Why are you so great at getting other people out of their problems, but you can't do that for yourself?" And a lot of people will have seen that as hate. But what I heard was, I'm really good at giving notes. And I actually enjoyed workshopping more than I enjoyed everything else in the whole program. I loved reading other people's stuff because he was right. I could see it like a math problem. I'd read it and I go, "Oh, here's the problem. And this is probably how you can fix it." I could just do that for other people. And so him saying that to me made me go into development. I skipped this part, but when I graduated from college, since I was already in my graduation year, I couldn't apply for film school immediately because I had missed all the deadlines. So I was out of school for 2 years because I needed to apply and then get in for the following year. So the first year I stayed in my college town and worked at my university. That second year, I moved to Los Angeles with nothing because I wanted to know, how does the industry work before I get to film school. So I came to LA and I interned. I was lying on all of my applications because I was no longer a student. I was 2 years removed at this point, but I was lying so that I could intern. So I did a lot of internships. I PA'd everywhere. I first AD'd, I second AD'd, and all of this stuff, like you said, it's apprentice. I'm learning on the job. I don't have any skills to come in except for being someone who's organized, understood email, understood Word, understood Excel, understood PowerPoint, all these other kind of things so that I could kind of get into it and get it done. So I left LA to go to film school. And while I was in film school, realized, okay, I'm good at notes. But in film school, no one ever talked about development. No one talked about studios. No one talked about networks. No one talked about the development process or executives. So I didn't know anything about it. So at that point, Google was getting a little better. It's probably Yahoo and not Google. I went and I was like, okay,
Oh, Yahoo.
right. It's like, so what kind of job do people like give notes on screenplays? That's probably what I'm, writing in. Development came up. There was a program called the Entertainment Associates Program. I applied for that program. I did not know that it was a big deal. I'm the kind of person who likes to learn in a classroom setting. That's just the way I like to learn. So I applied thinking they're going to teach me about being an executive or what it is to give notes and do, be in development and blah, blah, blah. Well, it was thousands upon thousands of people who applied. They chose 5 people. I was the only outsider that was chosen. The only person who was coming straight out of grad school, didn't even live in Los Angeles. The other four, 3 of them were working at NBC already, and one of them was at CBS. So everybody was already in the industry working. So they had a learning. My learning curve was way, like, it was so far apart. But anyway, I got there and it wasn't a program at all. It was a job. And I was like literally got there on my first day and they're like, "Here's your desk." And they left. And I was like,
Wow.
"What's up?"
I have never heard you tell a story. I remember, I mean, I've heard you talk about being an executive and
Mhm.
the learning curve being huge and you being like, I have to learn what all this is right now. But I had no idea that that's how it happened.
Yeah. And so when I left, that was the feedback I gave them. Like, you are advertising this as a program. Let me tell you what program means. You know what I mean? So I had to kind of just literally learn on the job. Um, and so all of that, again, it wasn't hard to get into. I just so happened to find my pathway through the educational route. But then once I was in, then that's when the struggle happened. And then I left that to go join a dance company. I left the dance company to go do Broadway national tours. While I was doing that, people were still contacting me like, "Hey, can you look at my screenplay?" So I started doing that on the side. So I went to New York. While I was in New York, I was getting more professional pen work that I wasn't looking for. So I said, let me focus. Let me focus on this. So I moved back to
Mhm.
LA with the intention of being an executive again. But now I had been gone for a decade. Nobody knew me. This is a who you know kind of place. So I said, all right, I'm getting all of these clients coming for the professional pen that I'm not looking for. So let me put musical theater to the side. let me put trying to be an executive to the side and let me just focus on this with taking all of the things that I know I'm good at, that I know how to do. And let me just do that. And all the other opportunities that I'm looking for will find me. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. But the other side of that, which you know, is just the entrepreneur part of it, which is if you're not working, you're not eating, which is marketing, 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 marketing. Because people don't, if they don't know you, then they won't pay you. And if they don't pay you, then you don't eat. So that's kind of been the larger struggle uh, for me. And so a lot of my investing in myself was on the entrepreneur side. Well, let's just say my first investment was I went to film school, right? I paid the money, I still have the student loans. I also went to UCLA Extensions, which is kind of
I went there as well. I didn't know you went there.
Yes, which is like, a continuation program. So I think I may have
Mhm.
taken 2 or 3 classes there. Um, I can't even remember half of the programs that I did, but when I was in my 20s, if there was something to go to and something to sign up for, I was in it, right? Always just receiving the information. And then once I became an entrepreneur, a lot of my investment had to be in like other coaches and other people who knew how to do this thing that I don't know how to do. Like, what classes can I sign up for? When I started doing this, even forget the entrepreneurial part, just so that I could get back in line with the industry because I had been living in on the East Coast and touring, for 10 years. So even though I understood writing, I wasn't on top of the trends.
Do you have a philosophy about why and in what ways artists should invest in their careers?
I think the biggest investment an artist can make, especially a writer, this is probably true for everybody else, but I'm just going to talk about writers in particular. The best investment is knowing yourself. Writers are always asking, how do I find my voice? I can't tell you that. It's yours. If you don't have your voice yet, it means you haven't confidently decided that you are enough and writing the way that you write is enough. And so a lot of the times, and this would probably go for any kind of artist or any kind of athlete or entertainer, because we grow up looking at another entertainer, we strive to be that, right? Some people are going to use that as kind of just a beta test of this is where I start. Now, where can I grow from that? And other people will say, no, that's the prototype. Like, that's the thing I have to be. Right. And I think trying to be that other thing is what's stifling your voice instead of realizing that, okay, this is a way to do it. That's also a way to do it. But how do I do it? And voice is different from structure. So I'm not saying, how do I do it? I just do whatever I want to do. I'm literally talking about how you put the words on the page so that even if your name's not on it, if I read it, I'm like,
That's a yes. I one of my favorite friends is a my favorite writers is a good friend of mine. Her name is O.C. Smith. And I don't care if I am in the middle of the Serengeti and I get an email that has like weird like symbols in it. If I read 5 lines, I know it's an O.C. Smith script. Her voice is that
yeah.
distinctive. And that is the bar. You do not need to win a bunch of Emmys to be successful or
Mm-mm.
and I don't know if it's just me personally and just sort of where I am in life and my career, but I think one of the things that's going to make you and your work weather the stand of time, what makes you timeless,
Mhm.
is how distinctive you are in terms of how your voice reflects in your work.
Yeah, I think it's important because so many people, and this is again, it's always going to go back to craft, right? But so many people get into this because they're not concerned about craft in the first place. They're in it because they want to be famous. They're in it
Okay.
because they have a story to tell, and nobody can do it better than that. And this is mine. This is the thing I'm doing, right? In that, there is no room for you to be you because you're too concerned with that end goal. You know what I mean? Like you're so concerned with being perfect so that you can make it to this level of fame. You're so concerned with, you know, I'm gonna put it on the page how I want to put it on the page because it's my story and nobody else can help me with it. That you're not allowing yourself to grow in your craft and become a great writer. You're not allowing yourself to blossom into whatever it is that you're gonna become. And so there are so many different people who come into this industry. This is the new hustle right now. Tubi. Even though Tubi is changing, but let's think about the Tubi of the last few years. That's the new hustle. Let me see what's on TikTok. Oh, that's trending. Let me go throw some people together with some terrible props, some terrible dialogue, a terrible script that's probably not even really a script. A lot of them are probably just getting up here and ad libbing, right? And then let me put it on screen and put it on Tubi because someone's going to watch it and I'm going to make money. And that's better than me being on the side of a corner selling something I'm not supposed to sell. So let me just get in here for the hustle of it. So there's so many different levels. The majority of the people are not coming in it because they're actually writers who are here for the craft and want to be writers. They're just coming in because they think this is easier than writing a book. This is easier than going clocking into my job every day. And it's like, no, it's not actually.
No, it's not, my friend. No, it is not. I have done both, and I can tell you it is not.
No, it is not. Okay, clock me in. Give me my benefits. Give me my paid leave. Give
And
me
do not call me when I get home to my
right, and
house.
don't and leave me
If
alone
that's
on the
what you
weekend.
want,
You know what I
right?
mean? So I think that's the hard part is that you're searching for this voice, but you're not in this for an authentic reason in the first place. You know what I mean? So you're blocking your own voice by being so concerned with fame that you're like, well, if I just write it exactly how Shonda Rhimes wrote it, then I should make it, right? And it's like, no, that's her voice.
Right,
Huh?
right. Okay, so I want to ask you about the nitty gritty in terms of
Yeah.
investments. There is film school,
Mm-hmm.
there are courses that you can take online,
Mm-hmm.
there are fellowships, there are labs, there are coaches, there are mentors, there are mentorships,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many different there's workshops, there's so many different
Yeah.
versions of how you can invest in yourself as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
um what are the investments that writers need to be thinking of?
Yeah.
What are the things that are worth their time, do you think, or worth their money?
Yeah.
And what are some things that may be off the beating path that writers aren't necessarily looking at?
Yeah. I'm gonna give a general answer because it's very, very subjective, right? You have to think about how you learn. So this is about strategy,
Hmm.
right? For example, I don't think college is meant for everybody. If you know that you don't learn well in a classroom setting, if you know that you don't learn well with 200 people around you, why would you spend $60,000 a year to go to a place where that's how they teach, right? So the same thing is true for I'm not good at learning online because I will be here, there. Look, I'm everywhere. I need to be in class with a teacher sitting right in front of me. I need a notebook. I need a pen. I need to, because if not, I'm not listening. I know that about myself. So much so that when I used to go to church for a decade, if I didn't have my notebook and my pencil, I wasn't listening because my brain just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, right? But I had to know that about myself before I spent my money. So I think you have to subjectively ask yourself, how do I learn? Right? Then you also have to ask yourself, what am I looking for? Because you're not going to get the same thing out of each of those things that you listed. So your job is to research to figure out what am I trying to get out of this? And then also realizing that you're not doing it because what you're trying to get out on the other end is access, because the majority of the things that you listed do not offer access, right? The only things that offer access are those fellowships that come from the big studios: Nickelodeon, ABC, NBC, Fox, Disney, which is also ABC. They intend to staff you because that's how they can show their programs are working and they can keep getting money for them. Every other thing out there is just another opportunity to learn, another opportunity to grow, another opportunity to network. They do not promise you anything on the other side. So if all you're looking for is access, then you already know which things you should be applying to. However, those fellowships are made for middle career writers. They are not for newbies. Believe me, you will not come out the gate first time getting in, because there have been people applying for 6, 7 years and it's their turn. You know what I mean? Because all of those programs take a small amount of people, because again, the point is to staff you. They can't staff 100 people. They don't have 100 shows to staff you on, right? Um, the other thing is Most of those kind of programs, those labs, those mentorships, those fellowships, they are not there to teach you. They're there to hone a craft that you've already been working at. So again, if you haven't done that research, then now you're wasting your money on registration fees and on application fees because you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna go. Disney's gonna teach me how to write a screenplay. They're absolutely not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? The other thing is, even if you decide to go to a university, you have to realize, and most people don't know this, so good, I'm gonna say it out loud. Most film programs are also not really teaching screenwriting. They usually are focused more so on writer directors, possibly producers, if you're one of the big ones like USC. And so they have screenwriting classes, but that's different from getting a degree in screenwriting. If you're in your, film program and you just took 3 screenwriting classes while you were there, you might as well be on the same level as everybody else when you get out. That's different from I went to a screenwriting program at a university, and every single year and every single semester I was having 2 or 3 classes. One was just on theme, one was on dialogue, one was on TV, one was on film, one was on documentary, one was on this, one was on adaptation. That's you really, really getting your screenwriting taught to you. You taking 1 or 2 screenwriting 101, 102, and 103, or 101, 201, 301, whatever, you're going to come out on the same level as everybody else. So again, what are you seeking? Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I went to graduate school, but in my graduate school program, there were 2 tracks. There was a production track and a writing track. So because I took the writing track outside of my first semester where everybody did production, every class I took was on writing. And if it wasn't on writing, then it was directing. Because guess what, as a writer, I need to see how people direct. Acting, because guess what I need to see from the writer's point of view? What the actors are doing. We did some theater classes where they were talking about construction and what they do with how they build the sets and blah, like all of that is still helping me as a writer. But every other one of my classes, I'm physically doing this. If that's not what's happening, then you're still going to not really know screenwriting when you get out of the program. So you have to do that kind of research, and not every program is going to be the same. You can't compare USC to NYU to Florida State to the University of Texas. They're not the same. They're not doing the same. You can also look into who your teachers are, but as we talked about earlier, theory and practice are not the same thing. So,
Oh God,
or
yes.
even being able to teach just because you practiced. You could have there I had Oscar winning teachers. I mean, yeah, professors. But they weren't teachers. They didn't know how to teach me how to do it. They knew how to do it. They could show me, but
It's a very different thing.
it's a
It's a very
very
different
different.
thing. And I didn't learn that until way later, understanding that sometimes somebody who's a great filmmaker cannot teach their way
Yeah.
out of a paper bag.
Because teaching in itself is a skill. And that's something
Yes.
that we don't talk about enough. Like even growing up, if you look back at your teachers, some of your teachers were way better than others. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
they understood how to help you understand.
I think I've learned that the most by being a member of Masterclass and paying for it, and realize that
Mm,
people at the top of their game don't necessarily know at all how to teach you how to do
no.
anything. And that was really helpful to
Yeah,
understand.
which is also why if you're gonna, like, let's say you decide to use film festivals as the thing that you're gonna invest in, even before you have a film, but you're going because they have panels, they have workshops, they have blah 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 blah. I was on a panel, so that means it's like 5 or 6 of us up there, and I was probably the least experienced because this was when I was just getting back into everything a decade later, right? So not that I didn't have any experience, but these people have been doing it, and I'm just kind of coming back, right? Afterwards, there was a line of people waiting to talk to me, whereas most of the other people were just, all right, guys, I'm out. And it's because the majority of the people came up to me and said, I have been to 5 panels today, and you're the only person who spoke about it very clearly, and I learned something. And I said, I would say to them, I said, well, because there's a difference. Like, A, I'm a consultant, so my job is to teach. But B, as a writer who's being invited to this panel, most of the time people are just asking about their experience. Their experience doesn't help you. Their
Right.
experience doesn't
Right.
teach you how to do anything. Also, they're not teachers. They're just a writer who's coming to talk about writing. They're just going to talk to you about the stuff that they do. They're not thinking about. So it's not that they're gatekeeping. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm just not going to tell them. They don't even have the vocabulary to help you to understand how to do it because that's not their skill. Their skill is doing it. Their skill is not
Right.
teaching. And
Right.
so even if you decide to go that route and say, well, I'm going to pay for all these workshops and I'm going to go to all these blah, 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 you won't know until you do it. Right. So some of that research is you have to spend the dollars. Same thing you do when you have a doctor. You go to the doctor and you realize this is not a match. Same thing you
This
do
is not right.
when you're dating. You're like, meh, but you had to go on the date or you wouldn't have known. So the same thing is true when you're looking for a consultant, when you're going to these workshops and panel discussions, etc. Know what you're going to get out of it. Sometimes it's just the information and being in the room with like-minded people, and sometimes it's, oh, I'm going to learn today and I'm going to be able, something's going to spark for me today and I'm going to come out with something to go for. So to your point, there's a lot of different ways that you can invest in yourself, but you have to have a strategy if you want to do this as a career. Your job is to strategize and say, well, which thing is going to get me to the place that I need to get? You also have to know what you're looking for, which a lot of newbies don't, right? You don't know what questions to ask because you don't know anything, right? And so some of that could be, well, just start going to the panels and just listen, and maybe that'll help you to get some questions together. And now you kind of know what to research and blah 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 blah. But it's a learning curve, like it's long game, and it's consistent. So I learned from my sister just by watching. She's a surgeon, right? So she was in school forever. She didn't get out of school until she was in her 30s, right? And then I would be at her house and she'd be reading these big old books and she'd like, oh, I have a test. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because as a doctor, you still have to stay on top of all the new things that are happening. It never
Mhm.
ends. Like she's always researching the new thing, reading about the new thing, testing and certifying and all these blah, 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 blah. And it's the same thing for us. You know what I mean? There's always going to be some new information. So you just have to be in on the ride for the long game.
I want to speak a little bit toward that concept of continual investment
Mm-hmm.
and that feeling of resentment we can feel when it feels like, oh, it's another thing I have to pay
Oh
for.
yeah.
Do I have to pay for this or whatever? Because I have definitely felt that, and then being on the end of being someone who does teach and who does
Yeah.
consult, have tried to sort of mitigate that from my perspective, which has not been helpful for me or the other person. Um, and I think what it boils down to is a very specific type of mindset.
Yeah.
There is a mindset. I don't even know if this is like appropriate to go there, but I'm going to go
Do
there.
it.
When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money and we qualified for free lunch.
Yeah.
And it was like free lunch, or you can do 30 cents, or you can do like $1.25.
Mm.
So we qualified for free lunch, and my mother would not allow it. So we, I think, paid reduced lunch, which was like 30 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, why are we paying for lunch if we qualify for free lunch? And she was like, nothing is free. And I don't ever want you to think that anything is free.
Mm.
And I didn't really understand that. Um, I didn't get it until I was living in LA and I was super broke, even after like having a job. And I was like, I can pay all my bills, but I can't really afford groceries.
Yeah.
And my friend of mine suggested I get on food stamps. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you, it is a seductive thing to get things for free.
Absolutely.
I'm being like, I'm being super real, and I know it can be controversial and triggering.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying this, and this is, I think I have to preface by saying it like, no shade to anyone, do what you have to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we were on all kind of assistance when I was growing up. So like,
I was on
there's
assistance
no
as an adult.
shame and like getting help when you need help.
Absolutely.
However, do not be confused that there is some I do not know the science, but I do, having experienced it, know that the seduction of getting something for nothing is addictive,
Mm-hmm.
and that addiction is harmful. because it feels like you're winning something. So there is like some dopamine, some feel good
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that you get, but it also robs you from the ingenuity and the incentive and the reward center that you get from the other thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm glad you said incentive because that was the word I was thinking. There's no incentive to get off. And this is coming from a person who I've been on unemployment. I've had food stamps. I've had I can't ever remember the difference between Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare. I've had Medicare, I believe. And this was during the time, as a performing artist, if I wasn't in a contract or whatever, then I was able to get on all of these things because I literally had nothing coming in, or whatever it is I had coming in was so small. But what I will say is, and this is in DC and each state is different, right? But if I did have a gig where I made, let's say, so let's say I was getting $200 in food stamps, but I had a gig this week where I made $500. Then they decide to give me $50 in food stamps. Now, because I want to work, I'm going to take that L. But other people are thinking, so if I stayed at home, I would have got the whole 200 in food stamps instead of going on the job. So why would I go on the job? Why would I go on the job? For what? Where's the incentive?
I'm trying to be like very, 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 very careful. But what I want to say is that the satisfaction of earning what you know now is a significant part of your growth as an artist. I have given extreme discounts for consulting with me or done it for free or as much as humanly possible for different organizations or nonprofits that help filmmakers or writers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different kind of way that I have found that not only writers show up, but there is a different kind of way that I have seen myself show up when I have paid for something versus not. I feel that I have valued my future in a way that is different, that's more potent
Mm-hmm.
when I invest.
Absolutely. There's a science behind that. There's a science behind even if you charge $1, the people will come versus if you have a free event. Because if it's a free event, again, they're not incentivized to attend. So you have an event, the RSVP is free, 100 people will push the button because why not? What do they have to lose? But then it's not because there was no value in it, it's not valuable to them. So they're not putting it on their calendar and they're not reminding themselves that they have to go and they're not actually showing up. But if you put a ticket price on it, you're likely get more people to show up, even if that ticket price is small. Then there's a science behind the higher the ticket price, the more likely the people will actually buy it because then they start to value you. And they start to say, well, if it's only $1 to go to the event, yeah,
Is it
it's
worth my time or whatever?
versus
And what I found to be tricky now is what you said about really having to get in there and experiment and throw spaghetti at the wall,
yeah,
which means a further investment.
yeah,
So I don't I've taken classes from, some of these online organizations or whatever, and I have some of them I'm like, oh my god, I love, and some of them not or whatever. And so because you kind of have to get in there to see,
yeah,
that includes more financial investment
yeah,
and more sort of labor in terms of time,
yeah.
research. I Google this person, I see, look at the credits, I kind of see what else they've done.
Mhm.
Whether it's like the time investment or the money or whatever, it sort of takes a little bit
It
more.
does.
And I have to be willing to have a bad
Yes.
experience. If you take any of my classes, I compare everything to dating, literally everything. And it is
That's
like
absolutely right.
dating.
Yeah.
And if you want to find a partner, you're willing to sort of put yourself out there and have bad
Have bad
dates
days,
and like
have broken
have
hearts.
bad experiences
Mhm,
for the hope that you win the love of your life.
mhm.
And but once you win the love of your life, there's still a consistent investment in getting to know that person. There's still a consistent investment in working toward conflict, or
Yep,
doing whatever you have to do to maintain that connection. And I feel the same way with our careers. It is a love affair
yeah,
that I have with storytelling, and I hope you as a listener have with
mhm,
storytelling, that you are willing to um, stay up late and take a risk and pay for something that may seem weird, or at the very least do some Googling searching
yeah,
um, in bed to like see if this opportunity is right for you. My hope is that you are putting yourself in a position to know how to maneuver this life
yeah,
based on like how much you've done.
yeah. I mean, it's and comparing it to dating, comparing it to finding a beautician if you move to a new city, comparing
Oh
it
god.
to to trying new restaurants. You're gonna spend your money and you don't know what you're gonna get, but you won't know until you do it. So what are you gonna do? Not eat? What are you gonna do? Not get your hair done? What are you gonna do? Not get your eyebrows done? You know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna do? Not get your feet done? And I think people are willing to make those investments more than they're willing to invest in their art. And not every class costs a whole lot of money. Some classes are $35. When I used to do online workshops, I don't do them anymore. But when I used to do those online workshops, they were only $35. And sometimes we still only get 5 people showing up, right? So it's like, I'm not even asking you to pay the $400, $500 service for the big thing. This is $35 for 2 hours of your time. And I'm going to teach you more in these 2 hours than you're going to get out of a whole semester of film school. But you didn't invest in yourself for whatever reason. Meanwhile, if a pair of shoes comes out and your homegirl has some and her homegirl has some and you don't have them, you're going to find that $80. You're going to find that 90. You're going to find that 100 and you're going to get them shoes. Your feet hurt and they don't look good in them, but you wanted them. So you did it, right? And so we just have to figure out, I mean, not we have to figure out, but like as a human being, the question just becomes, what are you willing to prioritize? But yeah, investing and understanding that and understanding the industry you're coming into. And I get it because generally speaking, it's gate kept. Lucky for you, for those people, especially the young people, lucky for you, you're growing up in a time where this is 40% less gate kept. I'm just making up a number. But it's like when I was growing up, there was no YouTube. It didn't even exist. Instagram didn't exist. Facebook didn't exist. So maybe some of these organizations did. From what I know, most of like the big organizations, the Black Script, that's not an old organization. Maybe 10 years or so. We Screenplay, Screencraft, all of those, maybe last 10, 15 years, right? They didn't
And
exist
they've just gotten really good
really, really
recently.
big,
Because
right?
baby, I remember the beginning, and the beginning was not what it is today
No. So
at
we have
all.
so much access. There are people in the industry getting on social media talking to you. We didn't even know
And
what half of those people looked like.
that's so rare. I do want to be very like, I try to give as much as possible.
Yeah,
I try to be as transparent as much as possible. But I do want to be very clear that just because there is a wealth of access now does not mean that A, it will always be this way, or B, that you have the space in real estate to just like swim around and like assume that this isn't privileged
yeah.
information. The fact I get on TikTok and see like Emmy award winning writers. I saw this one girl, I don't know who she is, I forgot her name, but she's a staff writer, and she may be above staff writer. She may be a story editor. I don't know. But she breaks down how to break an episode of television. Baby, do you know how far in the assistant trenches I was before I heard a showrunner in a writer's room
Yeah.
break down
Mhm.
an episode of television?
Before I even heard the term break down an episode of television, before I even knew that term existed and it was something that I should even be seeking. Where was I supposed to get that information? And
Unless you were in that room, you would have
unless you
never
would
heard it.
never know. Unless you're literally working in TV, you would know. Because again, I went to film school and they still weren't using that word.
Oh,
you
don't
know,
even get me started on don't even get me started on what I did not learn.
right. So
I
so for
yeah.
me, it's hard for me not to consider someone lazy. It's hard for me not to
Mhm.
consider someone just wanting things to be handed to them. When some of the questions that I get, I'm like, bruh, you literally can Google that answer and you won't get just one source. You will, like these days, I Googled something the other day and all it did was bring up TikTok videos. And I wasn't looking for TikTok videos, but that's what it brought up, which means I can get three, four different people's take on it. Am I going to take it all like it's the rule and it's law? No, but I'm getting all of these different perspectives. And so for me it's like it's a little infuriating. And this is where I think what you were talking about earlier, that crabs in a barrel, I had to do it this way, you have to do it that way, gatekeeping comes from, because sometimes it's just like, really? You have access to so much, like it's right there. And you in my inbox asking me this question? Really?
Mhm.
Where people don't respect that, like, this is a business. As much as I am passionate about this, and even if I had a rich husband and didn't have to work, I would be doing this, period. But I don't have a rich husband, so this is how I make my living. So I'm making these videos and putting them on the internet for you, so that I can show you I'm a thought leader, so that you trust me, so that you then want to work with me and pay for my services. So over the years, that's why I no longer do free workshops. I no longer answer those questions. Like, you have to be asking me something that's just like, yes.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
You know what
mhm,
I'm
mhm, mhm.
saying? Otherwise,
Don't do that.
yeah, yeah, don't
Don't
do
go to
that.
that hotel
You know what I
room.
mean? Otherwise, it's
Also,
gonna be
never
a
go to that
longer
hotel room.
conversation. Then I'm like, here's the link, and they click it or they don't. And then there you go, back to, so you didn't want it. So I guess the question wasn't that important. You didn't want to invest in yourself. You don't want to invest in me. You know that I've got the information, and you don't want to invest in me. You don't care about me feeding myself tonight. Okay. you know,
The last question I was gonna ask was, with the changes happening in the industry, with AI and the strikes and the lack of work and all of this stuff, is there a different version of investment that is needed or to have things shifted? And what I'm hearing is that um, the investment is more of a mindset than anything. Understanding that investing in yourself is par for the course. It is a part of your experience as a creative. That is a lifelong relationship with doing work, learning more, experimenting, trying things, taking risk, being generous to other people, and investing in yourself.
yeah,
It's sort of a lifetime of being in this world, and that includes multiple things. And investment
yeah.
is one of those.
Absolutely. A lot of people are just working jobs, and I get it, cuz hey, you got to live. But for the doctors, for the lawyers are always learning new laws. You know what I mean?
Mhm. And the laws are
The
always
laws are
changing.
always changing. Politicians, everybody who's in a career, changes are happening and you have to learn. So even with AI, I'm going to be honest, as a person in my 40s, I'm tired of learning new stuff. That's just my truth. You know what I mean? I don't want to know, but it's just because I feel like my brain is just full, especially running my own business and wearing so many hats, because I haven't gotten to a place where I can hire more people to wear some of the administrative hats. So forget the storytelling part. I've got contractors for that and they are fantastic. But as far as like marketing and branding and admin and tech and I'm doing all of that and my brain just feels full all the time. So when there is a new piece of technology that comes around, I'm like, I don't want to. So when AI started doing its thing, my first answer was no. Not because I am afraid that AI is going to replace me. I don't necessarily have that fear, but that's, that could be overconfidence, and that could be me knowing my voice and me knowing what I have to bring to the table. I don't know what it is. But in order for me to help other people, I've got to spend time with AI. In order for me to help other people, I have to not just use Final Draft. I have to go look at these other, and I don't feel like learning these things. But in order for me to stay relevant, I have to.
Can I just jump in and say that the challenge of AI, and it's such a perfect example when it comes to investment, because um, on one hand, I get a lot of fear
Mm-hmm.
from writers about AI
Mm-hmm.
and what it's going to do, and it's the devil, and they're trying to replace us and all this kind of stuff. By the way, I completely agree with your confidence in what you're saying and why. Except they haven't been using it.
So they don't
So if
know.
you don't know how it works,
Then you don't know.
how are you best prepared to circumvent it? Or how do you know that it's a threat, or understand
Uh-huh.
in which ways that it is a threat and it's not a threat, so then you can
Yeah.
shift your like.
And AI in itself, which I didn't understand until I started looking at it more, AI in itself is such a general term, right?
Yeah.
Because the AI that I use is ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is one of the best admins I've ever had, one of the best assistants I've ever had, one of the best, like, let's just brainstorm this idea and try to figure this thing out.
Mhm. It's fascinating, and I feel like if I end with anything, it is this. It is, and I think AI is the perfect example of like investing in like your own understanding. And that investment could be financial, it could be time, it could be investing in your relationships, it could be networking, it could be whatever it is. Um, but the important thing is to invest in having an understanding.
Yeah.
When you have an understanding of things, you know how to maneuver your career, and you know how to maneuver where your labor is going, where your money is going, where your relationships are going, who's included in your network. And then the lack that you feel in your life, the lack that you feel in your career, the lack. I don't have these relationships. I don't know these kind of people. I don't know any executives. The lack that you feel starts to become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller
Mm-hmm.
and smaller and smaller. You become much more savvy on how to make decisions that are best for you as a creative, the more knowledge you have. And that knowledge is on the other side of not just your money, that knowledge is on the other side of you changing your mind about what it's worth. Your understanding is priceless because it is what you make your decisions from.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much that is going to cost you financially, emotionally, mentally, if you have to make a mental shift. I don't know what that's going to
Yeah.
cost you. But I don't think that you can overprice having the knowledge to make the best decisions
Yeah.
for you.
And that's life. That's not just artistry. That's life. Like, that's what this whole thing is about. The more you know, the more you understand, the more informed decision you can make. Right? And you don't have to look back at it, even if your goal was, I'm going to go to this workshop to learn X. If you don't learn X, you still don't see it as a waste of time, money, or energy, because you still learned something.
And who else was there? What do you know that you didn't
Who
know?
did you meet? Like, there's so many things that can come out of it, versus if you made an uninformed decision and you just randomly spent money and then you didn't reach the goal on the other side of it. Now you're, more likely to be emotionally connected to that uninformed decision. Now it looks like a mistake, versus there are no mistakes if you're informed, right? Like, you are intentionally taking the step. You're intentionally signing up for that class. You're intentionally going to that mixer. I've been to a million mixers and didn't meet not one person. You know what I'm saying? But it was a part of what I needed to do for me, Shannon. You guys get out of the house. You got to go out. You got to meet people. You got to talk to people. And so, yeah, sure, I got there. I talked to people. There were no deals made. You know what I mean? Like, no services bought, no nothing like that. But what I needed to do was be out, see what other people have going on, meet people. So even though the end goal is always, how can I get somebody to buy my services? It doesn't mean every single time I go out and meet somebody that they're going to buy my service. But I am going to meet them. They're going to meet me. We're going to have conversation. I'm going to see them as a human being. They're going to see me as a human being. Next time I go to an event, oh, hey, oh, yeah, it's you. Now all of a sudden you have a relationship and it's been 5 years and now you know this person. And
You just really never
now,
know.
yeah.
You really never know. I know I keep saying this is the end. This is literally the last thing I'll
Okay.
say. Is that some of the best advice I ever got was from my boss at Sundance. And I first started Sundance and I wanted to be a filmmaker, but this is a desk job and we all feel our certain resentments about that. And I was comparing my career to this person. Well, this person is doing this and this person is doing that. And she looked me in my eyes and she said, "You haven't been living long enough to know how anybody's life is going to turn out."
Wow. Thank you. Punched you right in the face, did she?
And the truth is, in my father's words, we think we are way smarter than we are.
Yeah.
And
Always.
assuming that someone is not going to mean something to you just because they don't have credits and you met them and you have more credits than them and nobody is important here, and then you 3 years later this person has the opportunity to hire you, or 5 years later this person is the best friend you've ever had and you probably would have slit your wrist if you didn't know them. Like, all of that is investment to making sure that you get to a place of wholeness in your life.
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure talking with you. And I hope we can do it again. You have a ton of knowledge to offer. If you are looking for consulting or services to get your screenplay from where it is now or where it's supposed to be, I think Shannon can speak to it a little bit better. But if I am remembering correctly, that her incredible company takes you from idea to pitch. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely.
Got it. So how can people find you? How can people hire you? How can people get access to that big, beautiful brain of yours and any services that you may be offering?
Absolutely. So most people find me on Instagram at the professional pen. Also, that's the website, www.theprofessionalpen.com. All of our services are listed there. Our email address is also on the site and on the Instagram profile, but it's info@theprofessionalpen.com. So if you're looking for someone to help you to just, whether that's brainstorming, whether that's you woke up today and you have an idea, or you're in the middle of your career and you're kind of feeling stuck and you want to take your writing to the next level, or you're trying to beef up your writing portfolio, whatever it may be. If you're a producer and you're looking for someone to write, we try to be a one-stop shop for writers. We are
Oh,
writer
okay.
centered. There are not many places you're going to go that are writer centered. As soon as you get to that film festival, it's director centered. It doesn't matter who wrote that script, right? So we try to be writer centered. So whatever it is you need, we try to have that for you. So come on, check out the website and holler at us.
Oh, please do. Please do. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And please do check out her services. I know that what I've seen happen over a short period of time is just writers needing that sort of authentic feedback and not really knowing where to look. So here's where to look. Now you have no excuses at all. No excuses. It's time to invest in yourself. So do that.
Invest in yourself. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.